The bully tried to break the new black girl's arm in the cafeteria. Seconds later, he was crying on the floor. The sound of bone being forced back echoed through the Lincoln High School cafeteria like a gunshot, followed by a scream of pain that made 300 students freeze in place. But it wasn't the scream everyone expected to hear. Keisha Williams, 17, new to the school for just 2 weeks, was standing over Tyler Morrison as he writhed on the floor, clutching his right wrist to his chest. What should have been his public humiliation had turned into his nightmare in less than 5 seconds. "Someone should call the nurse," Keisha said calmly, adjusting her backpack on her shoulder as if nothing had happened. Her voice showed not a hint of satisfaction or regret, just a coldness that made some students involuntarily take a step back. Tyler Morrison wasn't just any bully. At 18, captain of the wrestling team and son of the town's mayor, he ruled Lincoln High as if it were his family's private property. No one had ever even considered fighting back against him, let alone a girl who had transferred from a public school in Detroit. 3 weeks ago, when Keisha arrived with her full scholarship and her clearly simpler clothes, Tyler immediately marked her as the perfect target. New girl, black, poor, no social connections. The kind of easy prey he loved to break down psychologically before she could establish herself in the school hierarchy. But Tyler had missed a crucial detail in the early days of teasing. Whenever he approached her with his typical intimidation tactics, Keisha would watch him with the same expression a biologist would use to study a particularly uninteresting species of insect. There was no fear, anger, or even discomfort in her eyes. Just a cold, calculating assessment. What the hell was that? Tyler groaned from the floor, trying to get up with one hand. "You broke my wrist." "Basic self-defense technique," Keisha replied, checking her watch as if she were late for an appointment. "Pressure on specific points, controlled rotation. Nothing permanent, if you don't force unnecessary movements." The crowd around them began to murmur. This wasn't the language of an ordinary student. It was too specific, too technical. And the way she had moved, it hadn't been luck or reflex. It had been training. Principal Peterson appeared, rushing through the crowd of students. What happened here? His first reaction was to automatically address Tyler. After all, it was impossible for the mayor's son to be the aggressor in any situation. "She attacked me out of nowhere," Tyler shouted, pointing at Keisha with his good hand. "She broke my wrist for no reason." Keisha remained silent for a moment, then pulled her cell phone out of her pocket. "Actually, I recorded the entire interaction. Want to see?" The blood drained from Tyler's face. Over the past 15 minutes, he had systematically escalated his intimidation, moving from whispered racial slurs to direct physical threats, culminating in an attempt to twist Keisha's arm behind her back just to teach her a lesson about respect. It had all been recorded in high definition. That's illegal," Tyler stammered, realizing he had fallen into a perfectly planned trap. "You can't record people without permission." "Connecticut is a one-consent state," Keisha replied without showing any emotion. "Anyone involved in a conversation can legally record it. Section 53A, 189 of the State Penal Code." Principal Peterson was visibly uncomfortable. The mayor's daughter quoting specific legal statutes was not in any conflict resolution manual he knew of. Keisha put her phone away and calmly headed toward the cafeteria exit. As she passed Tyler's group of friends, the same ones who had laughed at her taunts over the past few days, she paused for a moment. "For those who are wondering," she said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "I didn't come to Lincoln High to make friends or cause trouble. I came here for a very specific reason, and you just gave me exactly what I needed." Her eyes briefly met Tyler's, who was still on the floor being helped up by 2 friends. "Thanks for your cooperation." As Keisha disappeared down the hallway, leaving behind 300 completely perplexed students, Tyler finally managed to get to his feet. But when he looked around for support, he found only confused stares and something he had never seen before directed at him: doubt. If this story of a girl who turned her first school fight into something much bigger is making you curious about what was really going on, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Because what Tyler Morrison didn't know yet was that breaking his arm had been only the first step in a much more elaborate plan, and one far more devastating than anyone at Lincoln High could have imagined. During the 3 days following the incident in the cafeteria, Tyler Morrison discovered something disturbing. No one was talking about how Keisha had attacked him. Instead, the hallways were abuzz with whispers about the video she had recorded, and especially about the things Tyler had said before trying to hurt her. "I heard he called her Well, you know, Jessica Martinez murmured to a group of classmates near the lockers. And he said girls like her should know their place before trying to physically intimidate her. Tyler, his wrist immobilized by a splint and his reputation in tatters, decided he needed to regain control of the situation. If Keisha Williams thought she could humiliate him and get away with it, she was about to find out exactly who she was messing with. On Thursday morning, Tyler gathered his closest friends in the parking lot before class. Listen, this girl needs to learn a lesson. My dad has already talked to Principal Peterson. She'll be expelled by the end of the week. Dude, are you sure? Asked Jake, the team quarterback. I mean, she recorded you making threats. It doesn't matter what she recorded, Tyler cut in, his voice full of venom. My dad is the mayor of this town. The Williams family are Detroit nobles who came here on a charity scholarship. Who do you think the school is going to protect? But Tyler had made a crucial mistake. As he articulated his revenge in the parking lot, Keisha had calmly walked close enough to hear every word, and as always, her phone was recording. Keisha Williams hadn't arrived at Lincoln High by chance. 3 years ago, at the age of 14, she had lost her older brother Marcus, in circumstances the family could never forget. Marcus was a brilliant student who had earned a scholarship to a private school in Connecticut, just like Lincoln High. During the 6 months Marcus spent at that school, the letters he sent home gradually changed in tone. From excited and hopeful, he began to write about minor incidents and misunderstandings with other students. The last letter arrived 2 weeks before his death. Keisha, he had written, no matter what happens to me, promise me you'll never let people like that think they're better than you just because they have money. The truth always comes out, but sometimes it needs a little help. Marcus had died in an accident during a party at a schoolmate's house. Officially, he had drunk too much and fallen from a second-story balcony. But Keisha never believed that version, especially after discovering that Marcus's clothes contained evidence of a struggle, evidence that was inexplicably lost during the investigation. The father of the student who hosted the party? An influential local politician. The investigator in charge of the case? An old friend of that same politician's family. The accidental conclusion? Conveniently filed away before any more uncomfortable questions could be asked. For the next 3 years, Keisha devoted herself obsessively to her studies, sports, and especially to learning everything she could about self-defense and investigation. Not to seek impulsive revenge, but to systematically prepare herself for the moment when she could infiltrate the world that had killed her brother. Lincoln High was not a random choice. It was the sister school of the institution where Marcus had died, sharing teachers, traditions, and especially the same kind of culture that allowed privileged students to act with total impunity. Tyler Morrison, whom Keisha discovered during her preparatory research, had been present at the party where Marcus died. More than that, he had posted photos on Instagram from that night, photos that showed Marcus visibly uncomfortable and being systematically isolated and taunted by Tyler's group. While Tyler plotted his revenge against her, Keisha had already collected 3 years of evidence about the protective network that allowed people like him to destroy lives without consequences. Recordings of conversations, screenshots of social media, documents about suspicious student transfers, patterns of behavior that revealed a toxic institutional culture. On Friday, Tyler finally made his move. During lunch, he approached the table where Keisha was eating alone, accompanied by 5 friends and holding a printed copy of what appeared to be an official document. Well, Tyler said loudly enough for half the cafeteria to hear, it seems some people need to learn about consequences. He tossed the paper onto Keisha's table with a triumphant smile. It was a pending suspension notice, alleging unprovoked violent behavior and threats to other students. My lawyer got an order to review all that footage of you, Tyler continued, his voice dripping with malicious satisfaction. Apparently, editing evidence to make yourself look innocent is a federal crime. Who knew? Keisha examined the document calmly, then looked directly at Tyler. Interesting. Are you sure you want to go down this road? Oh, I'm very sure, Tyler laughed, gesturing to his friends, who also smiled maliciously. Girls like you need to learn that there are consequences when you mess with the wrong people. Girls like me, Keisha repeated softly, putting the document in her backpack. And what kind of girl do you think I am, Tyler? The kind who comes from Detroit, who needs charity to study here, who doesn't understand how things really work, Tyler replied, each word laden with prejudice and arrogance. The kind who thinks she can record a few words and take down people who really matter in this town. Keisha nodded slowly, as if absorbing every word. Then, for the first time since she had arrived at the school, she smiled. Not a friendly or nervous smile, but something that made Tyler take an involuntary step back. "Tyler," she said calmly, "you just made the biggest mistake of your life." She stood up, put away her backpack, and walked toward the cafeteria exit. As she passed Tyler, she paused for a moment. "Oh, and Tyler? That court order your lawyer got? It's going to be very useful when my lawyer requests a full federal investigation into patterns of racial discrimination and crime cover-ups at this school. Thanks for giving me exactly what I needed." Tyler stood still, slowly processing what he had just heard. Keisha had said "my lawyer," as casually as someone might talk about having a dentist. Poor girls from Detroit didn't have lawyers, unless there was something about Keisha Williams that he had completely underestimated. As she disappeared down the hallway, Tyler noticed that other students weren't looking at him with admiration or fear like before. Instead, there was something new in their eyes, a cautious curiosity about who this quiet girl really was, the one who had just turned his attempt at intimidation into something that sounded suspiciously like a very well-founded threat. That afternoon, Tyler tried to call the law firm his father had mentioned, but discovered something disturbing. The court order he thought had been issued in his favor was actually being challenged by a civil rights law firm, a firm that had apparently been investigating Lincoln High for months. The girl from Detroit wasn't just playing defense. She was several steps ahead in a game Tyler didn't even know was being played, and every arrogant move he made only provided more ammunition for a war that was about to explode in a way far more devastating than anyone at that school could have imagined. The following Monday, Tyler Morrison arrived at school with renewed confidence. Over the weekend, his father had made some strategic phone calls, and now Tyler was certain that Keisha Williams would not only be expelled but also sued for falsifying evidence. "Relax, son," Mayor Morrison had said over Sunday dinner. "That girl clearly doesn't understand who she's messing with. Tomorrow you'll see how things really work when you have the right connections." But when Tyler arrived at school that morning, he found something unexpected. Keisha was sitting in Principal Peterson's office, chatting calmly with a man in a suit whom Tyler didn't recognize. Through the glass door, he could see that both of them seemed completely at ease, as if this were a routine meeting. "Who's that guy?" Tyler asked Jake in the hallway. "No idea, but he pulled up in a black BMW with government plates," Jake replied, clearly nervous. "And he doesn't look like he's from around here." When Keisha left the office an hour later, she walked past Tyler as if he were invisible. But the man in the suit stopped beside him in the hallway. "Tyler Morrison?" he asked in a professional, authoritative voice. "I'm Federal Agent James Wright from the Department of Justice. We'd like to talk to you and your father about some events that took place 3 years ago. Specifically, about a party at your residence on March 15th. Tyler's blood ran cold. That had been the date of the party where Marcus Williams died, an event his family had worked hard to forget and that Tyler thought had been permanently filed away. I don't know what you're talking about," Tyler stammered, but his hands were shaking visibly. "Interesting," Agent Wright wrote something down in a small notebook. "Because we have records that you posted 47 photos from that night on your social media. Photos that, interestingly, were deleted 2 days after Marcus Williams' death. But you must know that nothing really disappears from the internet, right?" Tyler tried to process what he was hearing. If they had access to the deleted photos, then they probably had access to much more. The private messages he had exchanged with his friends mocking Marcus. The videos that clearly showed that Marcus had not been drinking voluntarily. The audio recordings where they planned to teach a lesson to the pretentious guy from Detroit. "My father will want to talk to your superiors about this," Tyler said, trying to regain some authority in his voice. "Actually," Agent Wright smiled coldly, "your superiors already spoke with your father this morning. He's being very cooperative. Perhaps you should consider the same approach." That afternoon, Tyler discovered that the investigation hadn't begun last week, as he had imagined. For the past 6 months, a federal task force had been gathering evidence on patterns of racial discrimination and possible cover-ups of crimes at elite private schools throughout Connecticut. Lincoln High wasn't just one of the schools under investigation, it was the pilot case. And Keisha Williams wasn't an ordinary student who had stumbled into an unfair situation. She was a trained informant, working directly with the FBI to document and expose a system that allowed privileged students to act with total impunity. As Tyler struggled to process this devastating revelation, Keisha was 3 blocks away from the school, sitting in an inconspicuous cafe with Agent Sarah Chun. Ironically, the older sister of one of the students who had been voluntarily transferred from Lincoln High the previous year after an incident with one of Tyler's friends. "This week's recordings are excellent," Agent Chun said, reviewing the files on her laptop. Tyler completely incriminated himself, and Principal Peterson's reaction to trying to cover it up was even better. "We have enough evidence for criminal and civil lawsuits." "What about Mayor Morrison?" Keisha asked, sipping her coffee as if they were discussing the weather. "He completely broke down this morning. He confessed to the meeting he organized to solve the Marcus Williams problem 3 years ago. Names, dates, amounts paid to shelve the investigation. All recorded and documented." Keisha nodded, but showed no satisfaction. For her, it had never been about personal revenge. It had been about ensuring that no other family went through what hers had gone through. "How many other families have we been able to identify?" she asked. 14 confirmed cases in the last 5 years at Lincoln High alone. Black and Latino students voluntarily transferred or expelled for disciplinary issues after confrontations with wealthy white students. All cases were closed without proper investigation. Agent Chun closed her laptop and looked directly at Keisha. "Are you sure you want to proceed with the final phase? Tyler Morrison is going to try one last desperate move tomorrow. It's going to be aggressive and probably dangerous." "I hope so," Keisha replied calmly. "I need him completely out of control so he confesses everything in front of witnesses. There can be no doubt about who he really is." On Tuesday morning, Tyler arrived at school accompanied by 2 private security guards hired by his father. His strategy was now different. If he couldn't make Keisha disappear quietly, he would make her disappear very publicly and humiliatingly. During recess, Tyler positioned himself in the center of the main courtyard, where all the students gathered, and began shouting for everyone to hear. "Attention, everyone. The girl you think is some kind of hero is actually a government informant. She came here specifically to spy on you and your families." A murmur ran through the crowd. Some students looked confused, others scared. Tyler took this as validation and continued. "Keisha Williams isn't even her real name. She's a trained agent who was planted here to destroy our school and our families. Every conversation you've had with her has been recorded and turned over to the FBI." Keisha appeared at the edge of the crowd, calmly watching Tyler's public collapse. When their eyes met, she simply nodded, the signal they had agreed upon. "It's true," Tyler shouted, pointing at her. "Admit it already. Tell everyone who you really are." Keisha walked slowly through the crowd until she was face to face with Tyler. The crowd fell completely silent, waiting for her response. "Tyler," she said calmly, her voice carrying across the courtyard, "you're right. I came here for a specific reason. And tomorrow, everyone will find out exactly what that reason was." She turned to the crowd of students. "Tyler Morrison wants you to know the truth about me? Fine. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. in the main auditorium, the whole truth will be revealed. About me, about him, about this school, and about what really happens when students like Marcus Williams try to dream beyond what people like Tyler think they deserve." The mention of Marcus Williams' name made Tyler visibly pale. Some older students vaguely remembered hearing about a transfer student who had died, but they had never made the connections. "Do you want to know who I really am?" Keisha continued, her voice gaining strength. "Tomorrow you'll find out. But before that, Tyler, why don't you tell everyone here about the party on March 15, 3 years ago? About what you did to my brother Marcus before he fell from that balcony." Tyler was completely paralyzed. The crowd around him began to whisper intensely. Some people were already recording with their cell phones, others frantically sending messages. It was then that Tyler realized he had made the biggest mistake of his life. By forcing a public confrontation, he had given Keisha exactly what she needed, an audience to expose everything his family had worked for years to cover up. That afternoon, when Tyler arrived home, he found his father in his office on the phone with an expression of utter panic. Mayor Morrison was desperately trying to contact anyone who could help him control a situation that was completely spiraling out of his hands. For a moment, when Tyler saw the genuine fear in his father's eyes, the man who had always been able to solve any problem with a few strategic phone calls, he finally understood that Keisha Williams wasn't just a smart student who had stood up to a bully. She was something much more dangerous. Someone who had spent 3 years meticulously preparing to destroy not only him, but the entire system that protected him. On Wednesday at 10 a.m., the Lincoln High auditorium was packed beyond capacity. Students, teachers, parents, and even members of the local press squeezed into the seats, all curious about the revelation Keisha had promised. Tyler arrived accompanied by 3 lawyers hired by his father, confident that he would finally be able to expose Keisha as an infiltrator and destroy her credibility forever. He sat in the front row with a smug smile, recording everything on his cell phone. "Everyone," Tyler announced loudly for all to hear, "you are about to witness a professional liar being exposed live." Keisha took the stage alone, wearing a simple t-shirt with a photo of her brother Marcus and the words "Justice for Marcus Williams, 2018 to 2021, printed on the front. The auditorium was completely silent. "My name is Keisha Williams," she began, her calm voice echoing through the sound system. "And Tyler Morrison is right. I didn't come to Lincoln High as an ordinary student." A murmur ran through the audience. Tyler smiled triumphantly, thinking he had won. "I came here as part of a federal investigation into human trafficking, murder, and corruption that has involved this school for more than 5 years." Tyler's smile evaporated instantly. Keisha pulled out a remote control and a screen descended behind her. "Marcus Williams was my older brother. 3 years ago, he attended a party at the Morrison family home. This party." Photos began to appear on the screen, images Tyler thought had been deleted forever. Marcus visibly uncomfortable being surrounded by a group of students. Tyler forcing something into Marcus's drink. Marcus staggering and being dragged out onto the balcony. "No!" Tyler shouted, standing up desperately. "These photos are fake. They've been edited." "Actually," Keisha continued calmly, "they were recovered by FBI forensic experts. Along with these audio recordings." Tyler's voice echoed through the auditorium over the speakers. "This kid from Detroit needs to learn his place. Let's teach him a lesson he'll never forget." Tyler's face was completely white now. Around him, students began to move away, whispering to each other with expressions of shock and disgust. "Marcus was murdered," Keisha said, her voice carrying the pain of 3 years of grief. "And you covered it up using money and political influence." Official documents appeared on the screen, suspicious bank transfers, minutes from confidential meetings, messages between Mayor Morrison and corrupt investigators. Tyler tried to run for the exit, but found that all the doors were blocked by federal agents. Agent Wright appeared on stage next to Keisha. "Tyler Morrison," he announced formally, "you are under arrest for manslaughter, concealment of a corpse, and obstruction of justice. My father will destroy you all." Tyler shouted as he was handcuffed in front of the entire school. "You have no idea what power you're up against." "Your father," Keisha said, "is being arrested right now in his office downtown. Along with Principal Peterson, 2 corrupt investigators, and the judge who dismissed Marcus's case." The audience erupted in shouts and chatter. Students recorded everything, parents frantically made phone calls, teachers looked at each other in total shock. Keisha addressed Tyler directly as he was led away by the agents. "Marcus was brilliant, kind, and dreamed of becoming a doctor. You killed not only him, but all the dreams he had. Now you're going to pay for every second of pain you caused." "This doesn't end here," Tyler yelled desperately. "My family has connections you can't even imagine." "Had," Keisha corrected. "Because every one of those connections is being investigated right now. 12 other families received justice today." Tyler was dragged out of the auditorium, crying and screaming about injustice, the irony not lost on anyone present. Keisha turned to the audience, especially the students who had remained silent for weeks while Tyler humiliated her. "Marcus taught me that the truth always finds a way. It just needs someone brave enough to open the door." The auditorium fell completely silent as she left the stage. For 3 weeks, they had passively watched a girl being constantly attacked and humiliated. Now they discovered that she was there to fight for justice not only for herself, but for all the victims who had no voice. As Tyler disappeared into the federal vehicle, crying like a child, Keisha knew that Marcus could finally rest in peace. The weak girl from Detroit had brought down an entire empire of corruption and privilege, proving that sometimes justice arrives exactly when it is needed most. 6 months later, Tyler Morrison was serving a 15-year sentence for manslaughter in a federal penitentiary. Without the privileges and protections he had always known, he quickly discovered how the world really worked when you didn't have the money or influence to buy your freedom. Mayor Morrison resigned in complete disgrace, losing not only his office but also the family fortune in lawsuits and federal fines. The mansion where Marcus had been murdered was confiscated and turned into a community center for underprivileged youth, an irony that did not go unnoticed by anyone. Lincoln High was completely renovated. Principal Peterson was replaced by a black educator specializing in civil rights, and the school implemented rigorous anti-discrimination programs. 12 students who had been voluntarily transferred in previous years received compensation and invitations to return. Keisha Williams became the youngest FBI special agent at age 18, specializing in investigating hate crimes in educational institutions. Her story inspired a federal law requiring private schools to report suspicious patterns of transfers and expulsions, known as the Marcus Williams Act. The case uncovered a network of corruption that spanned the entire state, resulting in the arrest of 14 officials and the complete overhaul of the local criminal investigation system. During a ceremony honoring the victims, Keisha held a photo of Marcus and spoke to hundreds of families who had finally found justice. "My brother taught me that true strength doesn't come from shouting the loudest, but from never giving up on fighting for what is right." Tyler Morrison tried to break a weak black girl from Detroit, but he discovered he had picked on someone who had spent 3 years preparing to destroy people just like him. Keisha proved that the best revenge isn't just taking down your enemies, it's building a world where they can never hurt anyone again. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel for more stories that prove that real justice sometimes needs extraordinary people willing to fight for it. Because in the end, the powerful only remain in power as long as the brave allow them to.